The Grand Exchange stood as it always had, a monument to commerce, order, and the predictable rhythms of Gielinor's economy. Merchants shouted their wares. Adventurers haggled over dragonbone prices. The great pillars of the trading floor gleamed under the afternoon sun, and the Varric guards maintained their eternal watch, hands resting on sword hilts, eyes scanning for pickpockets and troublemakers. Then, reality tore. It wasn't a spell. It wasn't a portal summoned by some ambitious mage, or a rift opened by demonic forces. This was something fundamentally wrong, a violent rupture in the fabric of existence itself, as if the universe had been stabbed by an invisible blade and was now bleeding impossible light. The air screamed. The ground buckled. Traders dropped their coin pouches and stumbled backward as space folded in on itself, creating a swirling wound of colors that shouldn't exist, sounds that hurt to hear, and a pressure that made everyone's ears pop simultaneously. For 3 eternal seconds, the breach hung suspended above the central fountain, spitting sparks of distorted reality. Then it belched out its cargo and snapped shut with a sound like thunder played backward. A man stood in the center of the Grand Exchange. He was completely, utterly bald, not shaved, but naturally smooth, as if hair had simply given up trying to grow there. He wore a yellow jumpsuit with a white cape that hung limply from his shoulders, red gloves, and red boots. In one hand, he clutched a slightly crumpled grocery bag containing what appeared to be eggs, vegetables, and a discount coupon fluttering at the top. He scratched his head with his free hand, looking around with the expression of someone who'd just gotten off at the wrong bus stop. "Huh," Saitama said, voice flat and unimpressed. "This doesn't look like the supermarket." His eyes, lifeless, bored, utterly devoid of the wonder or terror one might expect from someone who'd just been violently ejected through dimensional space, swept across the Grand Exchange. He noted the medieval architecture, the armed guards now rushing toward him with halberds raised, the panicking crowds, the clear absence of discount vegetables. Is there a sale going on? 20 Varrock guards formed a perimeter around him, weapons trained on this strange intruder. Their captain, a veteran of countless wilderness raids who'd stared down demons without flinching, found his voice cracking as he shouted the standard warning. "By order of King Roald III, you are commanded to identify yourself and state your business. Any hostile action will be met with..." Saitama looked down at his grocery bag, checking if the eggs had broken during transit. They hadn't. He seemed more relieved about this than concerned about the circle of deadly weapons pointing at his face. Ah, good. Still intact. The captain's hand tightened on his halberd. Something about this bald man's complete indifference felt deeply cosmically wrong. It wasn't defiance or bravado. It was the casual disinterest of someone who genuinely couldn't register the guards as threats. Like how you might ignore a toddler waving a stick. The existential mismatch had begun. The captain made a split-second decision that would haunt him for the rest of his career. He raised his halberd and brought it down in the universal signal for attack. 20 guards surged forward simultaneously, their training overriding the primal unease, screaming at them to run. They never reached him. Saitama sidestepped the first halberd thrust with the minimal movement of someone avoiding a puddle, not dodging, just casually not being where the weapon went. The guard's momentum carried him past, and in that moment, Saitama's free hand moved. It wasn't a punch. It wasn't even a push. It was more like he'd gently placed his palm against the guard's chest plate and tapped. The rune plate body, forged in the volcanic heart of Keldagrim, blessed by the dwarven smiths, enchanted to withstand dragon fire and demon claws, crumpled like tinfoil. The guard flew backward, not wounded but launched, his body creating a whistling sound as he sailed through the air, over the marketplace stalls, past the city walls, and disappeared somewhere in the direction of the lumber yard. A distant crash echoed back 3 seconds later. Saitama blinked. Oh! Whoops! Too hard? The remaining guards froze. That shouldn't have been possible. Rune armor was rated for combat level 40 enemies. Dragons, greater demons, Barrows warriors. A casual tap shouldn't have. Protect from melee! Someone screamed. And 19 guards simultaneously activated their protection prayers. Golden auras flared around them. Divine shields granted by the gods themselves, designed to reduce all physical damage by exactly 50% according to Gielinor immutable combat mathematics. Saitama scratched his cheek, looking mildly confused about why everyone was glowing. Is that some kind of festival thing? 3 guards rushed him from different angles, coordinating their strikes with practiced precision. Dragon long swords, blades that cost millions of gold pieces, that took thousands of hours of skill training to wield effectively, swept towards Saitama's neck, torso, and legs simultaneously. He didn't block. He didn't dodge. He just stood there, grocery bag in one hand, scratching his bald head with the other as the blades made contact with his skin. Clang, clang, clang. The sound was wrong. It wasn't flesh yielding to steel. It was steel yielding to something infinitely harder. All 3 dragon longswords, weapons that had slain literal dragons, shattered on contact with Saitama's exposed skin. Fragments of red metal scattering across the cobblestones like dropped cutlery. The protection prayer auras flickered and died, not because Saitama had dispelled them, but because the gods themselves seemed confused about what they were supposed to be protecting against. Oh, those broke, Saitama observed, looking down at the ruined sword hilts in the guard's trembling hands. Sorry about that. You probably paid a lot for those, huh? Mage intervention, desperation rising. A battle mage stationed at the exchange rushed forward, staff glowing with accumulated runes. He'd memorized the ancient magic's spellbook, unlocked through months of desert treasure quest completion. His combat level was 112. He'd soloed the Calphite Queen. He'd survived the God Wars dungeon. Ice barrage, he roared, and 23 ancient ice shards materialized in the air, each one capable of freezing a fully armored warrior in place, dealing massive damage and immobilizing them for 33.6 game ticks. The spell struck Saitama directly in the chest. Nothing happened. The ice simply stopped, not melted, not dispelled. The magical energy hit Saitama's yellow jumpsuit and ceased to exist, as if reality itself was protecting him from annoyance. The frost runes and the mage's staff crumbled to dust, spent for literally nothing. Was that magic? Saitama asked, brushing at his chest where the spell had landed. Felt like a breeze. The mage's hands shook. That's not possible. Ice Barrage has a maximum hit of 30. Your magic defense would need to be... He stopped, because the mathematical impossibility was too great to speak aloud. No defense stat went high enough, to reduce ancient magics to 0. The combat calculator didn't allow for it. "Try Blood Barrage," someone shouted from the crowd. "It's super effective against—" Everyone clear the exchange. The captain had finally found his voice again, though it cracked with barely suppressed hysteria. "Seal the gates. Send word to Falador. We have a class unknown entity. Non-combatants evacuate now." The marketplace erupted into chaos. Merchants abandoned their stalls. Players frantically teleported away, their Varric teleport tablets glowing as they fled. But a cluster of high-level player killers, wilderness veterans who'd made their fortunes killing other players, saw something different in this bald man. They saw loot potential. "He's clearly got some kind of bug exploit," their leader muttered, adjusting his Armadell crossbow. "Probably a damage reduction glitch. But glitches break. Everything breaks." 7 PK heirs materialize around Saitama, having used ancient teleport crystals to position themselves strategically. Their equipment represented hundreds of millions of gold pieces. Torva armor sets, twisted bows, dragon claws, an entire arsenal optimized for maximum DPS output. Their leader was wearing full ancestral robes and wielding a Kodai wand, items so powerful that even seeing them made regular players nervous. His combat level was 126, maxed in every stat, thousands of hours of grinding condensed into pure mathematical advantage. "Spec him," the leader ordered coldly. 6 special attacks fired simultaneously. Dragon claws tore through the air, each strike calculating bonus damage from the opponent's remaining health pool. Armadell Godzord descended in an arc of divine judgment. A dark bow launched dual dragon arrows. Ancient magics from 3 mages wove a net of elemental destruction. The combined damage was enough to kill a level 50 boss. Saitama looked up from examining his grocery bag. The attacks landed, every single one, and did nothing. The dragon claws shattered against his cape. The Armadell Godsword's blade bent at a 90-degree angle on contact with his shoulder. The dragon arrows bounced off his forehead with little ping sounds and fell harmlessly to the ground. The ancient magics splashed against an invisible barrier of pure existential wrongness and dissipated into sparkles. "Guys," Saitama said, voice still flat with boredom, "I'm trying to figure out where the grocery store is. Can you—" One of the PK heirs, panic overriding reason, threw his dragon claws directly at Saitama's face in frustration. The legendary weapon, worth 50 million gold pieces, struck Saitama's nose and crumpled like aluminum foil before clattering to the ground, now shaped like a metal flower. "Stop breaking your stuff on me? That seems expensive." The PKer leader's brain finally caught up with what his eyes were showing him. This wasn't a glitch. This wasn't some clever use of game mechanics. This was something that existed entirely outside the combat system. No armor class, no damage calculation, no hit chance. Just immunity. Absolute, casual board immunity. "Retreat," he whispered. Then louder, "Retreat! Everyone log out." But Saitama, growing mildly irritated that people kept attacking him while he was trying to navigate, waved his hand dismissively. Just a casual gesture to shoo them away. The kind of motion you'd make to clear smoke from your face. The resulting air pressure from that simple movement created a shock wave. It wasn't intentional. It wasn't even powered by anger. It was just the fundamental reality that when someone with Saitama's absurd strength moves their hand through air, the air moves. The shockwave radiated outward in a perfect circle, flattening every market stall within a 50-meter radius, shattering windows, and sending all 7 player killers tumbling across the cobblestones like bowling pins. Their armor, millions of gold pieces worth of endgame equipment, sparked and cracked from the impact, not from a punch, not from an attack, from the wind generated by a dismissive hand wave. Saitama looked around at the devastation he'd accidentally caused, his expression shifting from boredom to mild guilt. "Ah, man," he sighed, scratching his head again. "I keep doing that. Sorry." Classification failure. Theological panic. In the White Knight's castle in Falador, a scrying orb flickered to life. Sir Amikvars, leader of the White Knights and one of Gielinor's most respected military commanders, watched the replay of the Grand Exchange incident 3 times in complete silence. His second-in-command, Sir Viven, stood beside him, knuckles white from gripping the table edge. "Sir, we need to classify this entity. Is he demonic? Draconic? Some kind of Majorat transformation?" "None of those," Sir Amix said quietly, voice hollow. "Look at the impact patterns. No magic signature, no prayer alignment, no equipment bonuses registering on any detection spell. He's not using our world's power system at all. That's impossible. Everything in Gielinor has a combat level. Everything. Watch his movements again." Sir Amik rewound the scrying orb to the moment Saitama waved his hand. "He's not even aware of his own strength. Those shock waves were accidental. And look." He paused the image. When the dragon claws struck his skin, the metal deformed before the kinetic energy transferred. The weapons broke before touching him. His body isn't just resistant to damage. It's fundamentally incompatible with our concept of damage. Sir Viven's face drained of color as the implications sank in. If protection prayers don't work, if armor is meaningless, if magic has no effect, then everything we've built our entire military doctrine around is obsolete. Sir Amik finished grimly. 3,000 years on combat theory, worthless. The quest point cape means nothing. Combat levels mean nothing. He's not stronger than us within our power system. He exists outside it entirely. A messenger burst into the chamber, breathless. "Sir, the entity is moving. He's walking toward the wilderness border, asking random NPCs for directions to a supermarket with a sale on vegetables." Both knights stared at the messenger. "He's shopping?" Sir Viven asked weakly. "Apparently he thinks Gielinor is some kind of elaborate grocery store," the messenger confirmed, voice cracking with hysteria. "And he seems annoyed that nobody knows where the produce section is." Sir Amik Varze, veteran of the Third Age God Wars, slayer of demons, champion of Sara Domin, put his face in his hands. "Contact the Legends Guild," he said, voice muffled. "Contact the Void Knights. Contact every major combat authority in Gielinor. Tell them we have a Code Null situation." Code Null, sir? That classification doesn't exist." "It does now," Sir Amik said, looking up with haunted eyes. "It means we're facing something that our entire reality wasn't designed to handle. And pray," he laughed bitterly, "though it apparently does no good. Pray that he gets bored and leaves before he accidentally destroys something vital." Through the scrying orb, they watched Saitama wander past the wilderness wall, grocery bag swinging casually, completely unaware that he'd just shattered 3,000 years of military certainty in under 5 minutes. The theological panic had begun. The war room had never felt smaller, Three factions that rarely agreed on anything now sat around the same oak table, united only by shared terror. Sir Amikvar's represented the White Knights of Falador. Guildmaster Redemus Urkel spoke for the Legends Guild. And Commodore Matthias, face scarred from countless pest control battles, commanded the Void Knights' respect. Behind them, lesser officers and scribes lined the walls, taking notes on what would either become Gielinor's most important strategic document or its final obituary. The scrying orb projected Saitama's image above the table, frozen at the moment his hand wave had devastated the Grand Exchange. Everyone had watched the footage. No one wanted to watch it again. "Let's establish facts," Sir Amik began, voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. The entity arrived through an uncontrolled dimensional breach at 2:47 p.m. No magical signature preceded the breach. No ritual was detected. No prophetic warnings from any god. It simply happened. First fact, Radamus interjected, adjusting his spectacles with shaking fingers, contradicts 3,000 years of magical theory. Dimensional travel requires anchor points, stabilization runes, and massive energy expenditure. This breach was violent, chaotic, and consumed no detectable power source. Whatever sent him here treated reality like paper. Commodore Matthias leaned forward, jaw clenched. Second fact, the entity neutralized 20 Varric guards, 7 high-level player killers, and 1 ancient magic specialist without sustaining any observable damage. Dragon weapons shattered. Protection prayers failed. Ancient magics dissipated on contact. Combat level assessment impossible to calculate. Third fact, a young knight added from the corner, voice cracking. He doesn't know he's doing it. The market destruction was accidental. He waved his hand to shoo people away and created shock waves strong enough to demolish reinforced structures. He apologized afterward. Silence fell over the room like a burial shroud. "That's what terrifies me most," Sir Amik admitted quietly. "If that was accidental, what happens when he tries?" Radamus Urkel stood, pulling out a worn tome titled Catalogue of Known Threats, 4th edition. He flipped through pages with increasing desperation, each hypothesis more absurd than the last. Possibility 1. Corrupted Guthixian avatar. Guthix was the god of balance, and his death left residual divine energy throughout Gielinor. Perhaps this entity absorbed that energy and became unbalanced, all power, no restraint. Counter-argument, Commodore Matthias said flatly. Guthixian power maintains equilibrium. This entity is pure overwhelming force. No balance, no moderation. Just infinite strength casually expressed. Next theory. Possibility 2. Physical manifestation of the Empty Lord. We know Zaros was called the Empty Lord, a being of pure authority without emotional content. This entity exhibits emotional emptiness. He seemed bored during combat that should have killed him multiple times. Sir Amik shook his head. Zaros was subtle, manipulative, a master of ancient magics. This entity didn't manipulate anything. He asked for directions to a supermarket. Whatever he is, he's not playing political games. He genuinely doesn't understand where he is. Possibility 3, Radamus continued, voice rising with frustration. He's somehow consumed or bonded with an elder artifact. The Stone of Jazz granted immense power to those who touched it. Perhaps he found something similar in his home dimension. A senior mage spoke up from the back. I've analyzed the scrying footage frame by frame. There's no energy signature. None. When someone uses the Stone of Jazz, reality bends around them. We can detect the distortion. This entity, he doesn't distort reality. He just is. It's like reality has given up trying to apply rules to him. Then what in Saradomin's name is he? Sir Amik slammed his fist on the table, the first crack in his legendary composure. Everything in Gielinor has a classification. Demon, dragon, human, god, elemental. Everything fits somewhere in our taxonomies. But this code null, Commodore Matthias supplied grimly. He's a classification failure. Our entire system of understanding power can't accommodate what he represents. A Sara Dominus priest who'd been observing quietly finally stood, hands clasped as if in prayer. Gentlemen, I believe we're asking the wrong questions. We keep trying to understand what he is. We should be terrified of what he represents. All eyes turned to the priest. Let me pose a question, the priest continued, voice soft but cutting. What is a hero in Gielinor? Survivin answered automatically, reciting the White Knight's oath. A hero is one who trains their body and mind, earns sacred equipment through worthy quests, proves their valor against overwhelming odds, and maintains faith in the gods to guide their... Exactly, the priest interrupted. Now describe this entity's heroism. Silence. He didn't train, Radamus said slowly, realization dawning. His power isn't earned through skill levels. You can't grind your way to that kind of strength. He doesn't use equipment, Sir Amik added, voice hollow. Dragon weapons mean nothing to him. The quest point cape would be a joke. 300 quest points of legendary achievement, and he'd still obliterate the wearer with a sneeze. He doesn't pray, the priest continued mercilessly. Protection prayers, which connect us to divine grace and reduce damage through faith, did absolutely nothing. The gods themselves seem irrelevant to his power. And he has no purpose, Commodore Matthias finished, understanding flooding his scarred face. He's not here to save anyone. Not here to defeat evil. Not here to restore balance. He's looking for vegetables on sale. That's it. Ultimate power in service of grocery shopping. The priest nodded solemnly. Do you understand now? This entity invalidates every principle we've built our civilization around. We tell young knights that dedication and training lead to strength. Lie. We tell adventurers that completing quests grants legendary power. Lie. We tell warriors that faith protects them in battle. Lie. This bald man in a yellow jumpsuit proves that true power is arbitrary, unearned, and apparently boring. That's impossible, a Young Legends Guild member protested. Combat level exists. If you train attack to 99, if you wear the best armor, if you complete the hardest quests, you become stronger. That's how Gielinor works. The priest walked to the scrying orb and tapped Saitama's frozen image. Then explain him. Explain how someone who doesn't fit our power system can treat our strongest warriors like insects. Either our entire understanding of strength is wrong, or he's a glitch in reality itself. Perhaps, Radamus said carefully, both are true. Sir Amik stood and walked to the window overlooking Falador's training grounds. Below, young knights sparred with practice weapons, each one dreaming of the day they'd earn their full armor, complete their trials, become legendary warriors. I've spent 40 years training, he said quietly. 40 years perfecting my swordsmanship. I've completed 287 quests. I've killed demons, dragons, and dark wizards. I've earned the respect of kings and gods. And I did it all because I believed, truly believed, that the struggle mattered. That every training session, every quest, every prayer to Saradomin was building towards something meaningful. He turned back to face the council, eyes wet with unshed tears. Then this entity appears and reveals that all of it was arbitrary. He didn't train, didn't quest, didn't pray. He just is. And he's so far beyond anything we can comprehend that our entire lives of dedication are revealed as children playing with toy swords while a god walks past. But that's not the worst part, Commodore Matthias added, standing as well. The worst part is his face. Did anyone else notice his expression during the entire incident? Everyone had noticed. It was impossible not to. Bored, Radamus whispered. Completely, existentially bored. Exactly. He has ultimate power, power we can't even dream of comprehending, and he's bored. He's so strong that nothing challenges him, nothing excites him. He waved his hand and accidentally leveled half the Grand Exchange, and his response was mild annoyance that he'd done it again. Not pride, not satisfaction, just tired irritation. Survivin stood abruptly, chair scraping against stone. Stop. Please stop. You're saying that ultimate power doesn't bring fulfillment, that if we achieved everything we're striving for, we'd become like him, empty, searching endlessly for meaning that our own strength has made impossible to find. That, the priest said gently, is why he terrifies me more than any demon ever could. Demons are evil, but they're evil with purpose. They want to corrupt, destroy, dominate. But him, he wants a sale on vegetables. His infinite strength serves no purpose except making him lonely. And if the end result of all power is loneliness and boredom, then what are we training for? What's the point of our oaths, our quests, our entire lives of struggle? The room fell into suffocating silence. 53 people, all dedicated to martial excellence and heroic ideals, confronted with the possibility that their entire worldview was built on sand. A senior Void Knight stood, armor rattling. No, I refuse to accept this. We fight the endless pest invasions, not because it makes us fulfilled, but because it's necessary. Because if we don't, the portals would overrun Gielinor. Purpose doesn't come from personal satisfaction. It comes from protecting others. And if this entity decided to close all the pest portals with a single punch, Commodore Matthias asked, what then? What if he could solve every problem we dedicate our lives to with casual, bored efficiency? Would your purpose survive being made obsolete? The Void Knight sat back down, silent. Radamus Urkel cleared his throat, pulling everyone back from the philosophical abyss. Gentlemen, we can have existential crises later. Right now, this entity is wandering towards the wilderness, and we need a strategy. We can't fight him, Sir Amik stated flatly. That much is clear. We can't contain him, Commodore Matthias added. Any prison would be meaningless. We can't negotiate, Survivin said. What do you offer someone who can take anything they want? What leverage do we have? Then, Radamus said slowly, an idea forming, we manipulate him, not through force or bribery, but through psychology. Everyone leaned forward. He's bored, Radamus continued. speaking faster as the plan crystallized. Everything we've seen suggests he's searching for a challenge. Something, anything, that might actually fight back. That's why he keeps asking about strong enemies. That's his weakness. Not physical vulnerability, but psychological need. You want to entertain him? Sir Amik asked incredulously. I want to direct him. Listen, we can't stop him, but maybe we can aim him. Gielinor has genuine threats. The corporeal beast, Tuzkal Zuk, the resurrected Nex. Monsters that require dozens of max players to defeat. Entities that actually are dangerous. You think those would challenge him? Commodore Matthias was skeptical. No, Radamus admitted, but he doesn't know that yet. We tell him about the strongest being in Gielinor. We build it up, make it sound like a worthy challenge. We guide him to the wilderness, far from populated areas, and let him face these threats. One of three things happens. He held up fingers as he counted. 1. They somehow injure or slow him down, giving us information about his limits. 2. He defeats them easily, but decides Gielinor has nothing to offer and leaves. 3. He defeats them and realizes we lied, but by then he's at least contained his destruction to the wilderness instead of obliterating cities. And if he gets angry that we deceived him? A scribe asked nervously. Then we die instantly instead of slowly, Radamus said bluntly. But I don't think he gets angry. Everything we've seen suggests he barely registers emotions. He'll probably just sigh, call us weak, and wander off looking for his next disappointment. Sir Emmett considered this, weighing decades of military strategy against an enemy that invalidated all conventional wisdom. It's manipulative, dishonorable, everything the White Knights stand against. Yes, Radamus agreed, but it's all we have. Yes, the commander of the White Knights, defender of Sara Dominist ideals, champion of honor and righteousness, closed his eyes and made a decision that would define his legacy. Draft a message. Make it sound like an urgent quest. Tell him the ultimate challenge of Gielinor awaits in the wilderness. A convergence of the strongest beings ever recorded, gathered in one place. Make it sound worthy of his strength. And if he sees through the deception, Survivin asked. Then we pray, Sir Amik said bitterly, to gods who apparently have no power over him anyway. 6 hours later, a messenger approached Saitama as he wandered through the wilderness, still searching for that elusive supermarket. The bald hero was currently examining a patch of dead grass, comparing it unfavorably to the fresh vegetables he'd been hoping to buy. "Excuse me, sir," the messenger called, trying to keep his voice from shaking. He'd drawn the short straw, literally, and now had to approach a being that could accidentally kill him by breathing too hard. "Are you the powerful warrior who arrived at the Grand Exchange?" Saitama looked up. Oh yeah, that was me. Hey, do you know where—" "I bring word from the Legends Guild," the messenger interrupted quickly before Saitama could ask about produce again. "We've detected a convergence of supreme threats in the deep wilderness, the corporeal beast, Tuzkal Zuk, and the resurrected Nex, all appearing simultaneously. It's unprecedented. We believe they may be preparing a coordinated assault on civilization." Saitama's expression didn't change, still bored, still flat. "We've sent our best warriors," the messenger continued, reciting the script they'd given him, "but none have returned." The combined might of these beings is too great. We need someone with exceptional strength. Are they strong? Saitama asked, the first flicker of interest entering his voice. The strongest in Gielinor, the messenger lied smoothly. Each one requires hundreds of warriors to defeat normally. Together, they're considered unbeatable. If anyone could actually challenge them solo, it would be legendary. Saitama stood, grocery bag still in hand, and for the first time since arriving, his dead eyes held a tiny spark of hope. Strong, huh? Like, really strong? The absolute strongest, the messenger confirmed, praying the deception would hold. Okay, Saitama said, starting to walk north toward the deep wilderness. I'll check it out. If they're actually strong, that'd be nice for a change. The messenger watched him go, then pulled out a communication crystal. Stage 1 complete. The entity is heading toward the convergence point. May Saradomin have mercy on our souls. In the war room, 53 military leaders watched through scrying orbs as their elaborate deception unfolded. None of them believed it would work. None of them believed the three bosses would even slow Saitama down. But they had to try something, because the alternative was admit that their entire world, their training, their faith, their purpose, had been rendered meaningless by a bored man in a yellow jumpsuit looking for discount vegetables. The deep wilderness had always been a place of death. Scorched earth stretched endlessly under a gray sky, dotted with the ruins of civilizations that had learned too late what true danger meant. This was where the strongest came to prove themselves, where legends were forged or shattered. Today it would become something else entirely, a graveyard for Gielinor's final hope. 3 entities materialized at the coordinates the authorities had designated, not through coincidence, but through desperate magical manipulation, teleportation spells, ancient summoning rituals, and promises of fresh prey. The Legends Guild had spent every favor they'd accumulated over decades to make this convergence happen. The corporeal beast emerged first, phasing partially out of a reality. A massive, translucent entity that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions, its body rippling with dark energy that made the air scream. It had killed thousands of adventurers. Its stomp attack could one-shot players in full Torva armor. Its core mechanic, existing across dimensional planes, made it nearly invulnerable to conventional attacks. Tuzkalzuk, the infernal champion of the Tsar, rose next from a crack in the earth that spewed volcanic heat. 3 times the size of its lesser cousin Jad, wreathed in flames so intense they turned sand to glass. Wielding the power of 6 combat styles simultaneously. Players who challenged it brought entire teams and still failed 90% of the time. Its flame attacks ignored prayer. Its minions provided endless support, and its enraged mechanic meant it grew stronger the longer the fight lasted. And finally, Nex, ancient, terrible, resurrected against all natural law, once the most powerful Zerosian general, now restored with unholy magic specifically for this confrontation. Her 4 phases represented mastery of smoke, shadow, blood, and ice. Each phase required different strategies, different prayers, different equipment. She had been designed to be fought by 40 players, working in perfect coordination. The 3 beings regarded each other warily, natural enemies, brought together by promises they didn't fully understand. But they sensed something approaching, something that made their predatory instincts scream warnings. Saitama walked into the convergence zone, grocery bag still swinging in one hand. "Huh?" he said, looking at the three massive beings that towered above him. Big guys. In the scrying room, every military leader in Gielinor held their breath. This was it. Three beings that had killed tens of thousands of their strongest warriors, all focused on a single target. "Perhaps," Survivin whispered, "the combined assault will—" "Don't," Sir Amit cut him off. "Don't hope. That's worse." The corporeal beast attacked first, its partially phased body allowing it to strike from multiple dimensional angles simultaneously. Dark energy cores materialized around Saitama, each one preparing to detonate with force equivalent to a dragon's full-power breath attack. Saitama looked at the floating orbs with mild curiosity. Are those supposed to do something? They detonated. The explosion was visible from Varric, a column of dark energy that annihilated everything within 100-meter radius, atomizing the very ground and leaving a crater of glass and scorched rock. The scrying orbs went white with the energy output. When the light faded, Saitama stood in the exact same position, not even his cape singed. The grocery bag was intact. "Oh," he said, disappointed. "They were like fireworks." Tuz-Kalzuk roared, flames erupting from its mouth in a sustained blast that could melt diamonds. The infernal beam struck Saitama directly, bathing him in temperatures exceeding volcanic forge levels. The surrounding area spontaneously combusted. Rocks melted into rivers of lava. Saitama waited for the attack to finish, then patted his jumpsuit where the flames had hit. "Little warm?" Next descended from above, her voice echoing with ancient power. "Fumus." Smoke phase. Dark clouds enveloped the battlefield, toxic fumes that caused instant paralysis and suffocation. Umbra. Shadow phase. Darkness absolute, where even magical light died. Cruor. Blood phase. Crimson siphons that drained the life force directly from the target's soul. Glacies. Ice phase. Absolute zero temperatures that froze matter at the molecular level. All four phases unleashed simultaneously. Something that should have been mechanically impossible. A violation of her programmed attack patterns. But desperation had made her creative. The combined assault created a catastrophic elemental convergence. Smoke and shadow and blood and ice swirling in a maelstrom of destructive force that would have obliterated a small city. Saitama stood in the center of it all, yawning. "Is this it?" he asked, voice carrying clearly through the elemental chaos. "The messenger said you guys were really strong." The three beings looked at each other, an impossible moment of shared understanding between entities that had no common language. They realized simultaneously what the authorities in Falador had already learned. This wasn't a fight. This was a demonstration of their complete, absolute irrelevance. But they were predators, legends, beings that had killed gods-touched heroes. They would not go quietly. The corporeal beast phased fully out of reality, attempting to attack Saitama from dimensional angles that didn't exist in normal space-time. Its core mechanic, the very thing that made it nearly invincible, allowing it to strike from impossible directions. Saitama caught its claw mid-swing without looking, his hand somehow intersecting with an attack that was coming from another dimension entirely. The corporeal beast's eyes widened in what might have been shock. "That's a neat trick," Saitama said, but you're still pretty slow." He pushed the claw away, not hard, just a casual shove. And the corporeal beast flew backward, its partially phased body creating strange ripples in reality as it tumbled across the wilderness. It crashed through 3 hills before finally stopping, leaving a trail of dimensional distortion that would confuse cartographers for years. Tuzkalzuk summoned its full arsenal. Jad minions materialized. Healers appeared to restore its health. The pillars of flame erupted in complex patterns designed to overwhelm even the most skilled prayer flickers. Its enrage mechanic kicked in, multiplying its already absurd damage output by factors of 10. The infernal champion launched its strongest attack, the flame walls, a mechanic that required players to run in precise patterns while dealing damage, while avoiding multiple simultaneous threats, while prayer flicking against 3 combat styles. Saitama walked forward through the wall of flames. Just walked, not dodged, not prayer flicked, not executed any complex mechanical counter. He simply moved through lethal fire the way one might walk through a light rain, aware it was happening, mildly inconvenienced, but fundamentally unbothered. "Excuse me," he said, stepping around a Jad minion. "Coming through." He reached Tuzkalzuk and looked up at the massive, infernal titan, even bored, standing at the base of a creature 50 times his size that was actively trying to incinerate him. Saitama's expression remained unchanged. "You know what the problem is?" he asked, not really expecting an answer. "Back home, I fought monsters way bigger than you. And they were weak too. Size doesn't really matter if you can't actually hurt anyone." Tuzkalzuk's response was to stomp downward with force sufficient to create localized earthquakes, its massive foot descending towards Saitama with the weight of a collapsing building. Saitama caught it with one hand. The shockwave from the stopped momentum radiated outward, flattening everything within a kilometer radius. But the foot itself, tons of volcanic rock and infernal muscle, simply stopped, held in place by a bald man in a yellow jumpsuit who looked like he was holding up a grocery bag, because in his other hand, he was still holding his groceries. In the scrying room, Sir Amikvarze felt something break inside him. Not his courage, that had shattered hours ago. This was deeper. This was the philosophical foundation of his entire worldview, cracking like glass under pressure. "He's not even trying," someone whispered. He caught Tuzkalzuk a stomp one-handed while holding groceries. "The corporeal beast dimensional attacks are hitting him," another voice added. "I can see the energy impact. It's just doing nothing." "Nex is maintaining all 4 phases simultaneously," a mage reported, voice hollow. "That should be mechanically impossible. She's breaking her own programming to try harder. And he hasn't even acknowledged she exists." Radamus Urkel, who had proposed this entire strategy, stared at the scrying orb with the expression of a man watching his life's work revealed as meaningless. "We sent them to die. We knew they couldn't win. But I hoped they'd at least make him try. Make him use whatever technique or power or..." His voice cracked. "He hasn't even used a technique. He's just standing there, existing, and our strongest beings can't make him notice." On the battlefield, Saitama was starting to look annoyed. Not threatened, not challenged. Just irritated in the way someone gets when a mosquito keeps buzzing near their ear. "Okay," he said, setting a grocery bag down carefully on a rock that hadn't been vaporized. "You guys are interrupting my shopping trip. The eggs might go bad." He turned to face all three beings directly for the first time, his expression shifting from boredom to mild irritation. Still not angry, still not excited, just done with the situation. "I'll make this quick." Next, recognizing something in his tone, some shift in intent that her ancient warrior instinct screamed was significant, attempted to flee. Shadow phase mobility, teleportation spells, desperate backward flight. The corporeal beast phased entirely out of this dimension, retreating to the safety of interdimensional space, where nothing should be able to follow. Tuskalzook roared and summoned every defense simultaneously. Healing pillars, shield minions, volcanic barriers, stacking defensive mechanics that had been designed to make it survive coordinated raids. Saitama pulled back his fist. Serious punch. The words were spoken without emphasis, without dramatic build-up, without any of the ritual warriors usually employed before their strongest techniques. It was matter of fact, almost bored, like someone announcing they were going to close a door. His fist moved forward. Reality broke. The punch didn't just connect with Tuskalzook. It connected with everything in a straight line, extending from Saitama's knuckles to the horizon. The air ignited from friction. The ground vaporized. The shockwave traveled faster than sound, faster than most magical projectiles, creating a vacuum that sucked in everything nearby before the actual pressure wave hit. Tuskalzook, the infernal champion that had withstood the prayers of thousands, ceased to exist. Not defeated, not killed, simply unmade. Its body, its core, its very essence scattered into component atoms by the kinetic force of a casual punch delivered with mild annoyance. But the punch didn't stop there. It carved a canyon through the wilderness, a perfectly straight line of absolute devastation that extended for miles. The Chaos Temple, ancient structure that had stood for millennia, sat directly in the punch's path. It didn't crumble or collapse. It vaporized instantly, along with 3 square kilometers of surrounding landscape. The corporeal beast, hiding in interdimensional space that should have been completely safe, felt the punch's energy propagate across dimensional boundaries. Its phased existence offered no protection against force this absolute. It phased back into reality involuntarily, already dying, its body collapsing as the shockwave caught up with it. Next, flying at maximum speed, trying to activate emergency teleportation, felt the air pressure wave before the actual punch arrived. It hit her like a wall of solid force. Not the fist itself, just the displaced air, and that alone was enough. Her ancient armor cracked. Her bones shattered. She fell from the sky, defeated not by the punch itself, but by its atmospheric aftershock. The canyon continued to form, the earth screaming as it was forcibly reshaped. Lava fountains erupted along the edges, where the ground temperature had exceeded volcanic levels. A new geographic feature, visible from space, permanent, unmistakable, now scarred Gielinor's surface. In Varrock, 200 miles away, people felt the earthquake. Buildings swayed. Church bells rang spontaneously. Seismographic equipment that tracked tectonic activity simply broke, unable to record numbers that high. Saitama lowered his fist and looked at the devastation he'd caused. The canyon, the vaporized temple, the 3 legendary beings who were now either atomized or dying. His expression shifted from mild annoyance back to boredom, with a hint of disappointment. "Still too weak," he muttered, picking up his grocery bag and checking the eggs again. Still intact somehow. That messenger guy lied. These guys weren't strong at all. The watching horror, when slightly trying, breaks the world. The scrying room had gone completely silent. 53 military leaders, mages, knights, and strategists, the greatest tactical minds in Gielinor, stared at the footage without blinking, without breathing, without processing what they'd just witnessed. Commodore Matthias finally found his voice. That was him being annoyed, not angry, not fighting seriously, just annoyed that we interrupted his shopping. "The canyon," someone whispered. "It's permanent. That's going to be on maps forever. Future generations will ask what created it, and we'll have to explain that the bored man in a yellow jumpsuit was mildly irritated. Tuskalzuk doesn't exist anymore." A mage reported, voice breaking. "I'm scanning for its life signature, its core, any trace that it survived. There's nothing. 40 years of research into its mechanics, its phases, its weaknesses, all meaningless, because he just removed it from existence with a punch he called serious, but delivered with the energy of someone swatting a fly." Survivin was shaking. The corporeal beast. It was in another dimension. How did... The punch propagated across dimensional boundaries. Radamus interrupted, staring at his calculations with the expression of someone whose life's work had just been proven worthless. His kinetic force was so extreme, it affected reality itself. Being in another dimension didn't matter. Being phased didn't matter. Nothing matters when you can hit that hard. Sir Amik stood slowly, joints creaking, suddenly feeling every one of his 62 years. He called that serious. That implies he has other punches. Casual ones. Ones he uses when he's not annoyed. The implications hung in the air like a death sentence. "If that's what happens when he's mildly irritated," Survivin said, "what happens if we actually make him angry?" No one answered, because no one wanted to imagine Gielinor's fate if Saitama decided to throw a very serious punch, or whatever came after that in his incomprehensible hierarchy of force. On the battlefield, Saitama was already walking away, heading north, still searching for that grocery store. Behind him, the canyon, later named the Scar of the Bald One by traumatized cartographers, steamed in the afternoon sun, a permanent reminder that Gielinor's power ceiling had been shattered by someone who was only mildly paying attention. The 3 legendary beings that had required armies to defeat lay dead or dying, eliminated as an afterthought by a hero who hadn't even considered them worth remembering. And somewhere in the scrying room, a young knight started crying because he'd just realized that his entire life dedicated to martial excellence would never, ever matter in a world where this entity existed. Saitama wandered through the newly created canyon for 20 minutes, occasionally kicking aside rubble while muttering about false advertising and weak bosses. The dimensional breach that had brought him, which had been pulsing weakly in the sky above the wilderness since his arrival, suddenly flared back to life, recognizing its cargo and preparing to retrieve him. He looked up at the swirling rift with the same bored expression he'd worn throughout his entire visit to Gielinor. "Oh, there's the exit," he said, scratching his bald head. "Guess I took a wrong turn somewhere." In the scrying room, 53 pairs of eyes watched with desperate hope as Saitama prepared to leave. No one dared speak. No one dared breathe. This was their only prayer, that he would simply go away and never come back. Saitama floated up toward the breach. Apparently he could fly, another ability he hadn't bothered mentioning, and paused at the threshold. For one terrible moment, the military leaders feared he would turn around, realize what they'd tried to do, and deliver a serious punch to Falador itself. Instead, he just shrugged. "No good fights here," he said to no one in particular. "Maybe the next dimension will have someone strong." He stepped through the breach, reality sealed behind him. With a sound like a wound closing, the swirling colors vanished. The pressure in the air normalized. The dimensional tear was gone, leaving no trace except the canyon, the vaporized temple, and 3 dead legendary beings. Gielinor was safe. Gielinor was forever changed. The first damage reports arrived within the hour, delivered by shell-shocked messengers who'd surveyed the battlefield, while their hands trembled too much to write legibly. The scar, as it was already being called, extended 17 miles in a perfectly straight line, 3 kilometers wide at its deepest point. The bedrock had been exposed, not excavated, but vaporized. Geomancers estimated it would take 3 centuries for the land to naturally recover, if it ever did. The Chaos Temple was gone. Not ruined. Gone. A landmark that had existed for 3,000 years, through god wars and mortal conflicts, through ages of darkness and light, simply erased because it happened to be in the way of an annoyed grocery shopper's punch. Nex's body had been recovered, barely alive, every bone shattered, asking in the broken whispers how something could hit that hard. She would survive, but her legend wouldn't. The ancient Zerosian general had been defeated by atmospheric displacement. Not even the punch itself, just the air it moved. The corporeal beast's remains were scattered across 3 different dimensional planes. Recovery teams found fragments, but nothing cohesive enough to study or resurrect. Tuzkalzuk was simply gone. Not even ash remained. Combat level of the entity, Sir Amek asked the assessment team, already knowing the answer would be meaningless. "Incalculable, sir. Our entire classification system broke trying to process his output. If we had to assign a number based on damage dealt per second, it would be 13 million. Combat level 13 million, Survivin repeated numbly. The highest recorded player is 126. No, sir, not combat level. Damage per second. We can't actually calculate his combat level because he doesn't interact with the system. He exists outside it. 3 days after the incident, Sir Amik Varz stood before his assembled knights in Falador's great hall. 200 men and women in gleaming white armor, each one having sworn sacred oaths to protect the innocent, uphold justice, and pursue martial excellence in service of Saradomin. He'd prepared a speech, something inspiring about perseverance, about how true strength came from nobility of purpose rather than raw power, about how their calling remained valid regardless of what impossibilities existed in the wider multiverse. He couldn't deliver it. The words tasted like ash. "I have served the White Knights for 42 years, he said instead, voice hollow. "I have upheld every oath, completed every trial, trained until my body broke and then trained more. I believed, with absolute conviction that this path led to something meaningful, that dedication and righteousness would prevail against any threat. The assembled knights waited, sensing something terrible coming. 3 days ago, a being arrived in Gielinor who rendered all of that meaningless, not through evil, not through malice, through simple, overwhelming casual existence. He didn't train for his power, didn't earn it through quests or prayer or sacrifice. He just is. And his power is so absolute that our greatest warriors, our finest equipment, our most sacred prayers, all of it combined, couldn't force him to even try. A young knight near the front stood. "Sir, surely our purpose isn't about matching the strongest beings in existence. It's about protecting those weaker than us. About what?" Sir Amik interrupted gently. "About protecting people from threats that we now know with certainty we cannot defeat. About maintaining the lie that our training matters, that our oaths grant us the strength to face any challenge." He walked to the window overlooking the training grounds where new recruits practiced sword forms, the same forms he'd practiced at their age, believing they led somewhere important. I watched that entity and 3 legendary beings with a punch he described as serious, but delivered with all the effort of swatting a mosquito. The resulting canyon is visible from this window. That's not a metaphor. That's literal truth. We can see the permanent scar of his mild annoyance carved into our world. Silence fell like a burial shroud. "So I ask you," Sir Amik continued, turning back to face his knights, "what are we training for? If ultimate power breeds only boredom and emptiness, if the strongest being we've ever encountered was searching for discount vegetables because nothing else interested him anymore, then what's the end point of our dedication? What happens if we achieve our dreams and become legendary warriors? Do we also become hollow, bored, searching endlessly for meaning our own strength has made impossible to find?" An older knight, veteran of countless campaigns, spoke up. "Sir, with respect, we fight because people need defending, not because we'll become the strongest, but because we're strong enough to help. That entity's existence doesn't change the fact that demons still raid villages, that bandits still prey on travelers, that someone needs to stand between the innocent and danger." "You're right," Sir Amik admitted. "Practically, functionally, our purpose remains. But philosophically, theologically, we built our entire order on the belief that righteousness plus dedication equals the strength to face any evil. And now we know that's a lie. We know there are beings so far beyond us that our entire existence is irrelevant. We know our prayers mean nothing, our legendary weapons are toys, and our combat expertise is theater." "Then what do we do?" the young knight asked, voice breaking. Sir Amik looked at him with exhausted eyes. "We continue, because people still need protection from threats we can handle. We maintain our training because it helps against enemies that don't casually break reality. We uphold our oaths because they're all we have left. But we do it knowing, always knowing, that our significance is arbitrary, that we matter only because the truly powerful beings haven't decided to care about what we protect." He raised his voice to address the entire assembly. "The White Knights will endure, but we do so with humility now, with the understanding that our strength is permission, not right. We are guardians only because nothing stronger has decided otherwise, and if that entity returns, we pray to gods who apparently have no power over him that he stays bored enough to leave us alone." The knights filed out slowly, armor that had seemed so significant 3 days ago now feeling like costume jewelry. The emergency council session had been going for 6 hours. The Legends Guild, repository of Gielinor's greatest adventurers, keepers of the most difficult quests, arbiters of true heroic achievement, was debating whether to disband entirely. Our entire purpose, Radimus Urkel argued, voice hoarse from arguing, was to identify and reward genuine legendary accomplishment. But how do we define legendary after this? A quest point. Cape represents hundreds of hours of dedicated achievement, and that entity would view it as what? A participation trophy. He defeated our 3 strongest beings as an afterthought while holding groceries. So we redefine our standards, a senior member countered. We focus on achievements relative to mortal capabilities, not absolute power scales. That's just changing the definition when we don't like the results, another member shouted. That's philosophical cowardice. We're essentially saying we're legendary as long as we ignore anyone who's actually impressive. Radimus slammed his hand on the table. No, we're saying we're legendary within the context of Gielinor's natural power structure. That entity wasn't from here, wasn't part of our system. Using him as our measuring stick is like comparing a candle to the sun and declaring light meaningless. But that's exactly the point, a quiet voice said from the corner. Everyone turned to look at the speaker. An elderly adventurer who'd completed every quest in Gielinor, who wore the quest point cape with genuine pride. The sun exists whether we acknowledge it or not, and now we know there are beings so far beyond our comprehension that our greatest achievements are candlelight, useful in our small spaces, but utterly dwarfed by the reality of what power can actually mean. So what do you suggest? Radimus asked tiredly. That we give up, stop questing, stop recognizing achievement? No, the elderly adventurer said, standing slowly. I suggest we continue, but with honesty. We tell young questers the truth, that they're training to be the best humans in Gielinor, not the best beings in existence. That their achievements matter within our context, but that context is smaller than we thought. That becoming legendary means something to us, even if it would mean nothing to him. That's depressing, someone muttered. Yes, the elderly adventurer agreed. But it's honest, and perhaps honesty is more important than the comfortable lie we've been living. The debate continued, but the conclusion was foregone. The Legends Guild would endure, would continue recognizing achievement, would maintain its standards. But the pride had gone out of it, the certainty. They would continue being guardians of mortal excellence while knowing, always knowing, that mortal excellence had a ceiling, and something had just walked across that ceiling without noticing it existed. Commodore Matthias stood at the Void Knight's outpost, watching pest control operations continue. The portals opened. Pests swarmed through. Knights fought them back, protected the Void Knight, closed the portals. Repeat endlessly, forever, holding back the tide. It had always seemed meaningful, essential. The pests threatened to overrun the outpost, which would allow them access to mainland. Gielinor, which would result in catastrophic invasion. Every pest killed mattered. Every portal closed saved lives. Now Matthias couldn't stop thinking, what if that entity encountered a pest portal? Would he even notice it as a threat? Or would he walk through it, accidentally collapse the portal through air pressure displacement, and solve in 3 seconds what the Void Knights had been fighting for decades? "Sir," one of his knights approached, young and eager, fresh from training. "New portal opening on the western side. Should I rally a squad?" Matthias looked at the young knight, so earnest, so convinced that what they were doing mattered, and felt something break inside him. "Yes," he said quietly. "Rally the squad. Close the portal. Kill the pests." "Is something wrong, sir?" "Everything," Matthias wanted to say. "Everything is wrong. We've built our entire identity around being the elite defenders against an existential threat. And 3 days ago we learned that existential threats exist on a scale we can't even comprehend. We're not elite. We're barely relevant. We're theater actors performing importance while real power exists elsewhere, unaware and unconcerned with our struggles." "No," he said instead. "Everything's fine. Go defend the outpost." The young knight saluted and ran off, still believing in the significance of their mission. Matthias let him keep that belief. There was no point in taking it away. The pests still needed fighting after all. The fact that someone existed who could solve their entire problem with a yawn didn't make the problem less real for them. It just made their solution less meaningful. Six months later, the Scar of the Bald One had become Gielinor's newest landmark. Cartographers included it on all maps. Tour guides brought curious adventurers to see where reality had been casually broken. Merchants sold commemorative items. "I survived the Bald One's visit" shirts became inexplicably popular. But the real scar wasn't geographic. Recruitment to martial orders had dropped 40%. Why spend years training when you knew, with certainty, that your peak achievement would be irrelevant to true power? Prayer usage had declined. If divine protection did nothing against real threats, what was the point? Quest completion rates fell as adventurers questioned whether the legendary rewards were actually legendary or just locally significant. The theological crisis rippled through every church. Saradominist priests struggled to explain how their god of order had allowed such chaos. Zamorakian philosophers celebrated the entity as proof that strength trumped all order. Guthixian monks argued he represented perfect imbalance, all power, no purpose. None of them had answers. None of them could fit Saitama into their worldviews without breaking something fundamental. The White Knights maintained their patrols, but whispered doubts replaced their traditional prayers. The Legends Guild continued granting quest points, but the ceremonies felt hollow. The Void Knights fought endless pest control battles while wondering if their entire war was provincially meaningless. In Falador's war room, now permanently converted into a monitoring station, ceramic vars kept constant vigil. Scrying orbs watched the skies for dimensional breaches. Mages maintained detection wards. Messengers reported any unusual phenomena. They were watching for his return. "It's been 6 months," Survivin said one evening, joining his commander at the window. "Maybe he won't come back. Maybe we're safe." "We're not safe," Ceramic said quietly. "We're ignored. There's a difference." "You really think he'll return?" "I think he's wandering between dimensions, searching for something that will challenge him, finding only disappointment." and eventually, through random chance, his path might intersect with ours again. And if it does, Sir Amik turned away from the window, looking at his second-in-command with exhausted eyes. Then we pray he stays bored. We pray he doesn't accidentally sneeze and level a city. We pray he finds his supermarket sale and leaves quickly. Because that's all we can do. Pray to gods who apparently have no authority over him, hope for circumstances we can't control, and accept that our entire civilization exists at the mercy of entities that don't even notice we're here. That's a horrifying way to live. Yes, Sir Amik agreed, but it's honest. We spent 3,000 years believing we were significant, that our struggles mattered on a cosmic scale, that dedication and righteousness would prevail against any threat. The Bald One taught us humility in 5 minutes. He taught us that significance is context-dependent, that power has scales we can't comprehend, and that the strongest being we've ever encountered was bored because nothing could challenge him. He walked back to the scrying orbs, resuming his vigil. So we watch. We prepare for a threat we can't fight. We maintain meaning in our small context while acknowledging its ultimate insignificance. We protect Gielinor from threats we can handle, grateful that nothing stronger has decided to care. And if he returns, then we hope, desperately, hopelessly, that he's still bored enough to leave us alone. Because the alternative... Sir Amik trailed off, looking at the distant scar on the horizon, permanent reminder of what happened when something that powerful felt mildly annoyed. The alternative doesn't bear thinking about. In dimensions unknown, Saitama wandered through another world, fighting another disappointing monster, searching for that elusive opponent who might, just might, require him to try. He'd already forgotten about Gielinor. The name hadn't stuck. The faces blurred together. Another world, another weak challenge, another letdown. But the dimensional breach remained theoretically possible. Random, chaotic. Someday, through pure coincidence, he might arrive back at the Grand Exchange, still looking for that supermarket sale, still holding his grocery bag, still utterly oblivious to the existential terror his mere presence caused. And Gielinor would have no choice but to welcome their casual apocalypse with prayers that did nothing, weapons that meant nothing, and the grim acceptance that they existed only because he'd lost interest. The martial orders continued their training. The quest givers continued offering legendary rewards. The churches continued preaching that dedication mattered. But everyone knew the truth now, whispered in quiet moments when the certainty had cracked. True power was arbitrary, overwhelming, and completely divorced from purpose. The strongest being they'd ever encountered was bored, and he might come back.